It's funny how three of the most talked about and controversial films this year are spy like action thrillers that revolve around family. Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of No Time to Die. This movie's directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga, who directed Beasts of No Nation and some episodes of True Detective. The movie stars Daniel Craig, Leah Seydoux with Lashana Lynch, and Rami Malek. James Bond has left active service, and he's drawn back into the world of spies and espionage, but this time not by MI6, but by his pal Felix Leiter and the CIA. When they announced they were making a new James Bond movie, I got excited because I'm a huge fan of James Bond. But I realized that because Spectre wasn't the final Daniel Craig Bond film, that this new one had to be. And then they pushed it back again, and again, and again. So it's finally here, they finally released it. And going into it, I only wanted two things. I wanted this to be a nice conclusion to the Daniel Craig era of James Bond, and I wanted it to be better than Spectre. And was it? Yes, it was. I left the theater with a huge smile on my face, and admittedly, a few tears as well. I will start with the positives of this movie first. Daniel Craig as James Bond didn't miss a beat. He was really good. It's shown that he's come a long way from his Casino Royale days because he's not doing as many of the stunts as he was able to once upon a time, but he still carries the suaveness, the charisma, but also the toughness that is James Bond. The co-starring cast is also really good. Leah Seydoux is good in this role. She's a good actress, but there's just something about the coupling of James Bond and Madeline that I can't get behind. Now, James Bond says a lot of sweet things and some kind words to her, but I just didn't buy them as a couple. James Bond, like a lot of us, is still hung up on Vesper Lynd from Casino Royale. He still cares about her, and I think she was the best James Bond girl for the Daniel Craig movies. That's just my opinion. Lashana Lynch as the new 007, she was good. I'm glad that it wasn't just her taking on the mantle of 007 and then Daniel Craig coming back into the fold and then kind of kicking her out. She's in the film throughout, and they have nice banter as well. And then you have Ray Fiennes back as M. I'm really glad he came back because I thought he was only going to be in that role for a short time. Moneypenny is fine in this as well as Q. Moneypenny and Q have kind of taken, a sideline approach to these movies now that they've stepped into those roles. But it's okay because now the M, Q, Moneypenny, and even Tanner, that group of characters has now become like the Bond family, which isn't, it's not bad or anything, but it's like every time a mission goes down with Bond, they're all involved. Rami Malek plays the villain Safin in this film, and a lot of people are complaining that he's just, copy and paste, small villain who wants to take over the world. Well, you know what? A lot of the James Bond villains are like that. He distinguishes himself in this film from a lot of his other roles because of the way he talks and the way he looks. He kind of plays like a Hans Landa type role, which is ironic because Christoph Waltz is also in this movie, where he's at the beginning of the film and then he shows back up at the end of the second and into the third act. And I liked his character, I liked his layer, and I liked his philosophy on things. I honestly thought he was a better villain in this than Blofeld was in the previous James Bond film. Now, this movie, of course, looked gorgeous. It was wonderfully directed as well. And this movie has a lot of memorable scenes and characters. It has a lot of nods and references to the other James Bond films, but this one heavily references on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which I'm glad because that movie, aside from being the only George Lazenby film, doesn't get enough care. It doesn't get enough love. So I'm glad they heavily reference that film here. There were a couple scenes that really stood out as far as the directing goes, including this opening scene where these soldiers are rappelling down a building and they're breaking into a laboratory. But one scene that really blew me away is there's a scene where James Bond and another character are in a prison, and there's this sequence where the prisoner is coming forward and the camera is following the cell of the prisoner, not the person, but the cell, and just the way like a door and a window retracts and the camera is staying with the door and not the center object. It's you'll know when you see it. It was really impressive. Also, there's a scene in the third act where James Bond is going up this flight of stairs shooting a bunch of dudes and it's one take, so it's really impressive as well. Now, here's where I'm going to get into my mixed feelings on this movie, but also it kind of falls into all of the Daniel Craig Bond films. Now, the first film, Casino Royale, was really good because it was an origin story. Much like Batman Begins, we never got to see an origin story of, okay, how did James Bond start? What was his first mission like? What was his first Bond girl? What was his first interaction with M? Stuff like that. Casino Royale, aside being directed from the guy that did Goldeneye, that stands apart. That one's really good. But after that, because all the Daniel Craig Bond movies are in its own universe, they all follow continuity, which is nice, but because there was no roadmap laid out originally, it was like, okay, we have to throw in things from Casino Royale that we didn't intend on putting in here, but hey, we're going to connect all of them because we have to. When that movie came out in 2005, ever since then, the James Bond franchise has run into some problems. It's been having to compete with The Dark Knight, which changed movies forever, the MCU, the Mission Impossible films, and the Jason Bourne films. Because of that, James Bond's been evolving in such a way that's trying to keep itself apart from those franchises, but also kind of take things from them as well. And I feel like after this movie, if they're going to do another James Bond film, they should bring it back to the 60s. Make everything analog. Make it back to where it was fun. Because now, James Bond movies, they're all connected. And it seems like Daniel Craig's Bond is always putting his drama, his vendetta, his grief, his longing, his just sadness, and his wanting to be back with certain things from his past in front of the mission itself. And that, to me, that takes away. Because if you think I'm talking nonsense about the Daniel Craig James Bond being a downer and being sad all the time, look at the best songs from his movies. The first one was a banger. It was awesome. Quantum of Solace. But these last three, they're ballads. They're sad ballads. They're really good, but if they're supposed to reflect the movie as a whole, or at least the way James Bond sees himself, perceives himself, or the way we see James Bond, it's kind of telling. Also, Skyfall is Daniel Craig's third Bond film. Yet, somewhere between Quantum of Solace and Skyfall, he's been James Bond for years, and they call him the old guy. Yet, Inspector into No Time to Die, that's really not brought up. And I feel like Skyfall, the way it was done, and just the fact that I think it's a little bit better of a movie, that should have been the final film, with all its nods, references, and it showing Bond's age. Here, this Inspector really feel like movies that could have happened between that time frame. We don't get any fun James Bond moments or films. Daniel Craig rarely smiles in these movies. We should have gotten a Felix James Bond movie, or a film with a Jaws-type character, and no, Mr. Hanks from Spectre does not count. We've gotten all these James Bond movies, but he seems very sorrowful and grief-stricken the entire time, like he doesn't want to be there. And there's another part of me that also feels like this James Bond film was a lot like the final season of, let's say, The Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, The Shield, or a couple other shows where you have all these fan favorite type characters, and when it comes time to be the final season, guess what? Just like Breaking Bad and Oz, you've got to write off, replace, or kill off a couple characters because you don't know what to do with them. And I feel like because this is Daniel Craig's final Bond movie, that's also going to be the final Bond film for the actors that play M, Q, and Moneypenny, because they're a family. And without Daniel Craig, I don't see them coming back. I see the series being rebooted once again, just like the Dark Knight series. This is self-contained, and so No Time to Die is a good James Bond film. However, I feel it's hindered because of the Daniel Craig James Bond universe it's trapped itself inside. This movie has good acting, music, directing, and cinematography. I liked the comedy out of it. I liked the inclusion of another 007, something I thought we'd never see. And this was a good final chapter in the Daniel Craig James Bond universe. So, because of that, I'm going to give No Time to Die an A-. It definitely is up there with Skyfall and Casino Royale as the three James Bond movies that I really enjoyed, because it's definitely better than the other two. Daniel Craig's tenure as James Bond, I think, has proven a lot of people wrong. At first, people were skeptical about the way he looked, and if he could fill the shoes of that character made great by the late Sean Connery. And I think Daniel Craig has done a great job. And I think the world of Bond they've built around him and paid tribute to has definitely paid off. So because of that, thank you for Ion Productions or the Broccoli family and even Daniel Craig for bringing us a new James Bond for this generation. So until next time, guys, see ya.